Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for attending our webinar today. I'm going to give it another 60 seconds or so to allow people to get in. So if you're just sort of dialing in, we're going to wait until maybe 2:01, and I will hand it over to our Hall of Fame user, Doug Marshall, to go through his presentation. But again, thank you for attending, and we'll begin in about a minute. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining us today for our webinar. I'm Brian Martin, the Director of Customer Success at BizEquity, and today we have our special guest, Doug Marshall, who's going to go through a little bit of his background here with using BizEquity and using our Valuation Institute. So if you do have any questions, since we have so many people on, we did mute everybody. So if you want to type it into the box, I'll go ahead at the end and answer any questions that pertain to BizEquity. If it's specific for Doug, we'll try to get him to field those. But we should take about 30 minutes today. But again, if you have any questions, throw it in that box. And I guess without further ado, we'll pass it over to you, Doug.
Thank you, Brian. You hear me okay still?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So when I was chatting with Brian a couple of months ago, we talked about doing a webinar, and one of the thoughts that came to mind is that I found that the Business Valuation Institute and the Certified Business Valuation Specialist program was very helpful to me. I thought that I could relay, give a personal experience of what it was like before and after being in that particular program. So if some of you have gone through the program or some of you are considering going through the program, this might be a good way for you to evaluate if this makes sense for you to do. So what I'm going to look at over the next 30 to 40 minutes is looking at my experience before my integration into BizEquity and the Business Valuation Institute. Hopefully give you a good idea of what is contained in the course and how it works, along with a little bit of a quick refresh of what happens when you use BizEquity online. And then probably more interestingly, what's my life been after I went through the Business Valuation Institute, some of the results and insights that I've gained from doing that. And of course, if you have any questions, as Brian mentioned, we can take those on later if you want to do those online or offline. So here is just a little bit of history about myself. I've been in the financial services industry for quite some time, both on the corporate and the sales side. And I always had a bunch of good friends over at Principal Financial. And Principal Financial has a great small business unit. And one of the things that they offered to any business owner that wanted to get involved is to send financials back to Des Moines, Iowa. And Principal would, within about 4 weeks, come back with a 5-page valuation report for that business owner. And so that was used as kind of a recruiting tool for advisors. And the report was rudimentary in nature, but I think that it was a good start for creating a conversation for when you're working with a business owner. How do they handle succession decisions, retirement, estate planning decisions, and key employee decisions? It just made sense to know the valuation ahead of time before you start to make those types of decisions. And that's what Principal continues to do. I knew some of the folks in the advanced marketing department there. And I think some years they would do up to 800 valuations and get some sales out of it. So I always thought that was a good idea. It wasn't anything that the companies that I worked with adopted. But back when I was with Penn Mutual, I got wind, I think at the end of 2015 or the beginning of 2016, that Penn Mutual was looking into doing a pilot program with BizEquity. And once I found out a little bit more about what it was about, I said, I want to be kept in the loop on this because I'm very interested in an online valuation tool as I learned more of what it was. And so as a result, I started working with BizEquity via the Penn Mutual BizEquity license in 2016. And then after I learned more about how it worked, got better at using the system, I decided to get a direct license with BizEquity, and I did that, I think it was March 2017. And it was enabling me to be a little bit more flexible, and I had more resources available to myself by doing my own private label deal with BizEquity. But I still didn't feel that I was totally proficient. And then I found out that the Business Valuation Institute had been created. And so I was an enrollee and one of the first students in the first class offered in the fall of 2017. So that's kind of my journey, how I got to the Business Valuation Institute, just feeling that I needed some more education in the area of business valuation. So I felt that I had, this is my own personal assessment of where I thought that I had a basic understanding of the fundamentals of valuation, but I had some misconceptions now that I look back on it. I was fairly proficient in running the BizEquity software because I'm a bit of a tinkerer, so I would try different things. But most of my knowledge about valuation was from the book, What's Your Business Worth? And the business valuation reports that I would generate in the Success Center that I had available to me in my company's partner subscription. But I wasn't that great in answering the high-level questions. So I intuitively understood why valuation was important, but I kind of had a difficult time explaining why. So that's where I was before the Business Valuation Institute. Just as a refresher, there are several ways that business owners can get a valuation. They can go directly to BizEquity. They can go through a partner site that I was working on, as an example here, Penn Mutual, and then advisors can white label their own site. This is just a screenshot of the first page for my own site, and everybody else who does the partner program with BizEquity would have a similar thing done with their logo. And so it's a 7-step process. It's the same 7-step process that you would go through whether you're on the BizEquity Direct, a partner program, or your own program. It's the exact same calculation engine that goes into the BizEquity program. And the core of the 7 steps, because the first 2 steps I don't really consider to be steps because it's just basic information about the company that's pretty black and white. But the core of the 7 steps is to be able to put in the income information, asset, liability, growth, and operation information. And that's what gets you the valuation. But it's very quick. It's not too terribly time consuming. And I'm really jazzed about how it works. The advantages of having my own website with BizEquity is that I have a little bit better control of valuations and client management, and this will make sense a little bit later. I also have the direct access to the Success Center, so I get a little bit better education for myself, so I can access it when I want 24/7. There is a prospecting tool in there, but I'm not totally sold that that's the major reason why you would want to work with BizEquity, but it also enabled me more freedom to practice and learn and enter numbers and change numbers and see what happened to the valuation based on the information that I put into the system. So I just became better at understanding how the system worked. So that's not to sell anybody on getting their own system. It's just to say that it was very helpful to me and it supported what I did with the Business Valuation Institute. Just so you know, online, and Brian will address this, you can go to the BizEquity website and there is some online information about the Business Valuation Institute. And then, of course, there's the place where you can contact BizEquity if you're interested in enrolling in the class and getting more information directly from Brian and the team. So here's the course structure. It's an online learn at your own pace course, so there's no travel involved. I talked to an accountant who went to a 4-day deal in DC. He didn't spend much time touring around DC because he was just in a conference room center in some hotel with a 4-day course going on. It was fairly intensive, but it was also fairly expensive. This course is affordable in my estimation. The course itself has 6 different modules. They call them tiles on the online structure. I found the online structure to be fairly easy to use with some reservations, and I'll just kind of mention that as I go along. But included in the course, you had readings that you needed to do from text, videos that you needed to watch, questions you needed to answer, assignments, and you could also interact with others who were currently taking the course with you. So you could question back and forth if you were having a particular trouble with something. Excuse me. And of course, Scott Gabehart was available too for various questions when it came to valuation. In the course material, I did experience acronym overload, but that's common to all of the stuff in the financial services industry. So it took me a while to kind of get used to how the acronyms were working, so that I was a little bit more on top of it, what I was reading and consuming into my mind. That would be just one comment that I would give back to the Business Valuation Institute. But I don't think, like I said, I don't think that is unique to Business Valuation Institute. It just is what it is. The final project is the last of the 6 tiles, and that is fairly intense. You're doing your own capstone project and valuation. Excuse me, I'll take a sip of water. And I personally estimate that I spent about 60 hours on this course. That's probably twice as what it should take most people. But a part of the reason is I'd start going down rabbit holes, and I would start chasing down videos and trying to answer some questions that came up in my own mind. So you can spend as much or as little time as you want on this course. It's not required that you do 60 hours. I just found that in order to get what I wanted to get out of the course, I need to spend that amount of time. So in my estimation, who's the course for? I think any advisor, banker, CPA, high-end user of BizEquity who wants to get better at valuation and have a bigger impact, to have the knowledge that was contained in this course is very useful. So here are the 6 modules or tiles. You get an introduction to business valuation, which I found to be very helpful. You learned how to evaluate business entities. We revisited a lot of stuff that I got in accounting, which was financial statement analysis. And it had been a little bit of time since I had been directly involved in that. So it was helpful to review some of those things. And then you really got into the meat of it by looking at the different classical approaches and methods to valuation. And then the heart of the valuation program that BizEquity offers is through the ARM approach. And so this is where you really have to learn what BizEquity is doing when it's doing the calculations for giving you the valuation. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then there's the capstone case study that is the final assignment for you to get the certification. So here's some of the materials. This is my dog-eared book, my hard copy of the Business Valuation Institute book. All of the text is also online. I found it helpful to have the hard copy book with me, because then I could make notes in the book. This is the table of contents here. And those were the 6 sections that I talked about. There was also the What's Your Business Worth book that I had read already, but that's the one that was written by Mike Carter and Scott Gabehart. I also found Scott Gabehart's business valuation book that was published in the early 2000s. And I found this off of Amazon as a secondhand book. I found that to be helpful as well. That's not included in the course material. I think that they have that in a PDF format. But once again, I read a lot of stuff off of Kindle. When I'm studying, I find it's helpful to have the hard copy with you. The other resource that I found interesting in this particular course, once again, I apologize for the cough, was the introduction to people online that were very proficient in valuation. And Dr. Demodrian he is an excellent presenter of the concepts of valuation. In fact, this introduction to valuation session that I've got on the screen here on YouTube, this is a really excellent series. Even if you don't take the course, to listen to him talk about valuation and what makes sense for how you go about doing valuations and some of the strategies involved, he's worth listening to. So he was not the only person that was a part of the course, but we were also referenced out on the online course into other YouTube videos where people were talking about various aspects of valuation. So you're using the resources, like I said, the text material, the online material, but then we were also going out to YouTube. And that's part of why it took me a little bit of extra hours, not because I was watching funny cat videos when I went on to the YouTube. It was because I found other people that had different ways of describing valuation. And when I got their different perspectives, some of the stuff that I was learning in the course started to make a little bit more sense. And that was very helpful to me because I didn't have a great foundation in the area of valuation. So these outside resources were very helpful in the course. And then, of course, you'd get some videos where Scott Gabehart would be a part of the course and Michael Carter would be a part of the course. And so the whole thing was very complete. At the end, I kind of felt that I had a little bit of a drink from a fire hydrant, but I also felt that my foundations were a lot better off. So the mission of BizEquity, obviously, is to deliver valuations with speed and accuracy. That's my version of their mission, but at a reasonable cost. But they also do want to democratize the valuation systems. So the same way that you can get relative value on your home or your car through Zillow and Kelley Blue Book, you should be able to get in a very short amount of time for a business owner the fair market value of their business. And for any of us who are in the financial services business, whether it's a CPA or you're a financial advisor or you're a banker, it doesn't matter, or you're a lawyer, time is not your friend. If it takes a long time to get an evaluation done, it can grind whatever planning was going on to, it can grind it to a halt. So the speed and accuracy of what you get through the business valuation platform is very important. So here are my big gains from going through the Business Valuation Institute. One is that it allowed me to be a lot faster in how I responded to people when I would do a valuation or work with other advisors that were working with me in the valuation process. So I understood after taking the course that there is bias in every valuation system. But what I do like is that I learned that the business valuation software from BizEquity is consistently biased. So if you're comparing one number at one point in time to another number at another point in time, at least the calculation has been consistently biased. And bias is not bad, it's just how the valuation person decides to weight different aspects of that business. It also helped me to understand what valuation is and is not. It got me comfortable with the fact that there is no absolute right answer in valuation. It's not like accounting where 1 + 1 = 2. Sometimes 1 + 1 can equal 1.5 or 3 when it comes to valuation. It just kind of depends on the situation. The ARM approach, which I will talk about on the next slide, is very important into understanding how the business valuation system works from BizEquity, because this is the one that Scott Gabehart has helped to create and has determined that this is the best way to determine fair market value. And if you understand how that works underneath the system and how that is integrated into the calculation, you have more confidence when you're talking to the business owner about their valuation. The other thing that I found is that there were different places where it was hard to know exactly what number you're going to put into the valuation system. And one of those is officer compensation. So when I would get a valuation back from a client and the numbers didn't look quite right, I now, through the Business Valuation Institute, had a bit better idea of where to go look and find out whether or not some of the numbers that were input by the client might be a little bit off. And I was comfortable with being uncomfortable about those particular numbers. And I didn't have to panic over some unexpected results. And an example of that is before I did the Business Valuation Institute, I was nervous about a business owner asking me about a particular question about the valuation, and I might really not know why that number came up the way that it was, but I had to have a much better feeling for why the numbers are the way that they are through the Institute. I had a better understanding of fair market value and what it means and what BizEquity is trying to drive for. I have a better idea of what it means to understand Rule 5960, Revenue Ruling 5960, which is really the basis for how all valuations should be done. If you read anything, you should go to that revenue ruling, read it, because it does describe, how estates should be valued, how businesses should be valued when, the IRS is coming into play. It also helped me understand the difference between GAAP accounting and the generally accepted business valuation principles and procedures. Not that they were ever similar, but I think it's comforting to know, now that I understand this, that just like we have GAAP accounting, we also have a system for what the practices should be when valuations are done. So it's not this willy-nilly science that somebody's pulling a number out of their hat. And it really helps to understand what those practices are, and you learn that through the Business Valuation Institute. And it also helped me better get a feel for how to position valuation for all types of companies, whether they be new, mature companies, and companies that were at the end of their life, where they might be transferred to the next generation or getting ready for sale, and where the valuation system would fit in. And I think that it's really designed for goal-oriented business owners. And I got that from Bill Black on a webinar that he did. It really helps people understand what's going on in the valuation. And probably the biggest insight into all of this was I was able to see that valuation has the same level of importance in the life of a business as accounting does. But the difference between the two is that accounting's looking at everything that's happened up to that point and it looks back. Valuation does take into consideration some of the things that have happened historically, but it's looking forward and what's the result of that valuation. Once I help a business owner understand the difference, they start to understand the value of valuation. And that's what I'm better at now, is helping the business owner get an idea of what the valuation can do for them as an owner. I mentioned that I was going to talk a little bit about the ARM valuation approach. It is meant to keep the valuation simple and consistent. ARM stands for Adjusted Cash Flow, Rules of Thumb, and Market Comp Data. And it's the combination of these things weighted in different numbers that will determine the value of the business. And this is how the valuation gets generated inside the business valuation program that BizEquity has. I had read about it in the textbook, What's Your Business Worth? But I didn't fully understand it until I went through the Valuation Institute. So that's something that I think is really important for you to know, for you to better run the valuation system. A couple of things that insights that I also gained, and I had mentioned this before. This is the income page, the third of the 7 steps. On the left, if you can just get the business owner to put in those numbers and also get the officer compensation right, I think you get them into a position where they will complete the data. That's just been my experience. And once they put in, for those who haven't gone through this experience yet, once they put in the revenue and the pre-tax number, the pre-tax income number, an estimated value in that green box starts to appear. I put the green box in there just so you could see where I was talking about. But I did wrestle a lot before the Valuation Institute with the officer compensation, because I didn't realize that what they were trying to do in the system was to look at a single owner business. And then if you had multiple owners, you need to make adjustments for that. And that's where some of these valuations can get a little bit off. And the last thing that I wanted to do is to present to a business owner a valuation and then have somebody that really knew what they were doing say that I was all wrong, and I would be embarrassed and I would lose credibility. So I was able to better get a feel for the numbers that would go into the system here. So a couple more slides, maybe three, and just some thoughts about what makes the system better for me now after the Business Valuation Institute is I think that it makes sense to practice with the system. It's how I learned calculus in college. I had a guard job at night, and I would just do problem after problem after problem. And it wasn't because I was that brilliant, but it was because I did it over and over and over again. And so I just practiced with the system. And I also feel that through the Business Valuation Institute and the ongoing videos that are available to me through from BizEquity and YouTube, I just try to keep educating myself. So I don't consider that my learning has ceased, but it's just a continuation of what the foundation was that was built for me through the Valuation Institute. One example that I use for business owners that kind of was driven out of my learning from the Business Valuation Institute is this little set of numbers that I have here. I look at the 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 and the 1 plus 5 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2. Those are all accounting numbers. You could have a business owner that is focusing on the 2 and the 5. And if they're focusing on the 5, saying their business is doing really well. But if these are two different businesses, the one on the top and the one on the bottom, they might both have the same valuation, but they might not all have the same components that go into the valuation system. One's very steady Eddie, one's a little bit more herky-jerky, but they should be looking at their businesses as having the same valuation. But this would also tell them where they could focus to maybe create some better value. So once I help a business owner understand that the valuation number is a composite of everything that goes into their business financially, and also the growth in the operations, then they start to understand that this allows them to keep track better how their company is functioning. So it helped me create some better examples by better understanding how valuation works. So this is where I am now. I've got a far greater level of confidence in when I talk to a business owner about the idea of valuation. And a lot of that comes through education and repetition, doing it over and over and over again. I promote valuation not as a one-time thing, because so many business owners think that it's just a one-time thing, but I promote it as a periodic measurement tool for those goal-oriented business owners. And I think that it helps create discovery and validation for a business owner so that they can believe in what they're doing. So I just kind of built on top of what BizEquity already had, which was discover, monitor, and optimize the value of your business. And because I'm on the protection side, I just added protect. And so that's kind of what I promote to the business owners. And a lot of that was created through the stuff that I learned in the Business Valuation Institute. So just in finishing up here, I wanted to say that I was very grateful that this was created so that someone like myself could roll up their sleeves and get educated without having to fly all over the country and commit a lot of time to stuff that I really wasn't going to be able to commit my time to. But it was also very specific to how the valuation software works within BizEquity. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Brian.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Doug. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the question box now, see what we got. Are the numbers close to the actual values? So Don, I think you're talking about the valuation tools, in which case we're not going to get into the whole accuracy of that, but I'll shoot you an email privately. And here we go. After running evaluation for business. And then the next question from Sam is about which multiples were used in our system. So there are some cases where we can share that. A lot of time it's going to be part of our kind of algorithm. So we can't always just sort of open up the hood. But if you do have questions about what type of multiples were used, and even on that thing when you do run business valuations, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll absolutely do what we can to help your clients understand their valuation.
Hey, Brian, I can make a comment to that too.
Yep.
I can kind of back into that now that I know what's going on behind the scenes through the Business Valuation Institute, if that makes sense. So I can plug a few numbers in, and then I can isolate and say, what if I'm focused in on income only? I don't add any assets. I can see what the multiples are for that particular set of figures. And then the other interesting thing that I'll do is I might change the industry code, because you'll see that the multiples will change for a particular industry. So, it's a software that's doing a lot of calculation in the back end. And I often equate it to Ray Dalio tells a story in his book Principles that one of his early marketing tools was he went and bought a little chess game from Radio Shack. And he'd send it to his clients or his prospective clients, and he said, I can't beat this machine on level B. It's kicking me. And he said, we let our computers do the calculation behind the scenes so we can do the other mental stuff that needs to be done in our investment analysis. And this is what this system is doing. But it does help to know what the numbers that you put into the system, what is going to transpire and why it's transpiring. That's why it makes sense to play around with the numbers to see how the valuation number changes.
Perfect. And we'll get one more question in here. How does this help you in acquiring new small business customers? So I think kind of the key there, and Doug, if you have a cleaner answer than I do, it's just giving you more, a little bit more of the ability to speak to the actual numbers. A lot of our users, run the valuations, and most of their customers are fine with getting the numbers, but it sort of helps you explain it, understand it better. And in that case, I think it makes you just a more comfortable, more competent user. And in that case, it helps you discuss valuations kind of on a more detailed scale rather than just referencing numbers in the system.
Right. And so what I would say to any business owner is, some of the benefits of knowing the value of your business are, secure financing. This is a lot of the text that comes out of BizEquity and not the Institute, but secure financing, ensure proper credit and risk management, attract and retain talent, sell for full value, high impact partnership, pursue growth initiatives, and I also add unexpected opportunities. If you know the value of your business and an opportunity is presented to yourself, as a business owner, you're going to be in a better position to take advantage of that opportunity if you know the value of your business. If you don't know, it's going to delay the process and you might miss out. So knowing the value of your business can create a lot of potential, and it also helps them make better decisions. And a lot of the stuff that I quote is stuff that's been written by Michael Carter, but I do believe that knowing the value of your business is going to make you as a business owner make better decisions overall.
Perfect. And I'll just get one more in there. So this says, I'm an advisor, not a numbers person. Is this course supposed to make me an expert in valuation? So I wouldn't say it's going to make you an expert in valuation in the sense that you're not going to be out there running certified valuations, but it'll certainly give you a leg up in anything valuation related. So I don't want to say the word expert, but you'll certainly be beyond that beginner or novice, and more so than any of our users who haven't attended the course.
Yeah, and I kind of am a numbers person. It was still hard, but I think it's worth taking a stab at doing it. And one of the things that might get you into it is look at that guy Aswath. If somebody doesn't, if I can't pronounce his last name really well, but if you can't find him on YouTube, you can just shoot me an email and I'll send you a link to it, because he does do a good job of kind of giving a good overview, and he's fun to listen to. He presents really well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody for attending. You'll be sent a recording of this in about an hour, and you'll have my contact information. So anything else that we can follow up, we'd be happy to share. And thank you very much, everybody. Have a fantastic day.
Good day. Thank you.